order negates resolve, Spain should grant Catalonia its independence. Our first contention is combating terror. Currently, Stefani Mueller of DW finds in August 2017 that Spain has had an extremely successful counter-terror unit and has historically worked together with Catalan police to stop terrorism. However, Harvey Gavin, the Express, finds in October 2017 that with independence, all Spanish police would leave the region. Indeed, Dorshali of the El Nacional corroborates in 2017 that independently Catalonia lacks sufficient defense forces right now. Problematically, Rebecca Canero of El País furthers in 2017 that lack of communication between Spanish and Catalan police forces leaves room for attacks similar to the terror attacks earlier this year in Barcelona. The impact of terror is a hotspot. Soaring currents by 2012 that an independent Catalonia would emerge as ground zero on the continent, become one of the top incubators for terrorism in the West. Rick Nowak of the Washington Post quantifies in August 2017 that nearly a third of Spanish convicted terror suspects were caught in Catalonia. Our second contention is a setup for failure. Granting independence ensures state failure for 4 reasons. First is infrastructural barriers. John Henley of The Guardian explains in October 2017 that an independent Catalonia would need to establish its own central bank, defense force, other critical infrastructure such as city buildings and transportation, as well as a debt plan and negotiate trade agreements. Problematically, Daniel Capiro of The Telegraph explained in October 2017 that Catalonia would be locked out of debt markets and thus forced to default on its debt to Spain, thus crippling its economy. Thus, Liam Wimhurst of iNews concludes in October 2017 that Catalonia cannot afford this basic infrastructure, which is a prerequisite to a functioning nation. Second is international isolation. Liam Wimhurst furthers that not a single international body has expressed support for Catalonia, which indicates that Catalonia will be internationally isolated, unable to remain in the EU, and would have to create their own new currency. This is because European nations would blockade Catalonia from international backing. Problematically, E.T. Enlin of Barcelona Info explains in July 2017 that this international isolation would doom Catalonia to economic and political crises, relegating it to failure. Third is political fracturing. Michael Brimbong of the Washington Post explains in October 2017 that the pro-independence coalition currently controlling Catalan's government consists of an extremely polarized group of far-left and far-right politicians who can only agree on the issue of independence and nothing else. That's why problematically, Drew Garland Brown Political Review corroborates in 2017 that upon independence, this coalition would quickly fracture under ideological lines, rendering proper governance impossible. Indeed, Sebastian Faber of The Nation concludes in September 2017 that left-wing parties have already said that the alliance between the right and the left would instantly dissolve after independence. That's why Gard concludes that Catalonia would experience complete political turmoil as an infant state. Now, fourth is silent majorities. Heather Collins for the Center for Strategic and International Studies explains in October 2017 that the majority opposition to the idea of independence by Catalans indicates that there would be a significant discord if independence were granted. Indeed, Lawrence Ariels of Politico quantifies in July 2017 that just 41.1% of Catalans support breaking away from Spain. That's why Xavier Morato of April 2016 writes in his book, Catalonia, a New Independent State in Europe, that independence without majority support in it would inevitably lead to internal violence between separatists and unionists, dooming the state to failure. Because of these 4 reasons, E.T. Edlund concludes that, quote, Catalonia will become an unrecognized failed state facing imminent economic crises and political catastrophe. The impact of state failure would be devastating. David Sroski of Duke University quantifies in 2009 that empirically, secessionist states have had a 90% probability of experiencing conflict, most commonly involving a civil war. Rice Smith of the Express impacts in October 2017 that the current Catalan crisis is incredibly reminiscent of the past Spanish Civil War that killed 500,000 people. Now, moreover, Zarab Iqbal of Penn State furthers in 2008 that the presence of a failed state increased the probability of civil war by 45% and the probability of international conflict by 115% in neighboring states. So to avert failure, we negate. Thank you.
It's like 3 seconds.
Is everybody ready? All right, let's start. We affirm contention 1 is stop in secession. Curious 17 of the OMFAF explains that recent strife in Catalonia is not spontaneous, but rather the product of a buildup of tensions. Without independence, violent secession is inevitable for 5 reasons. First, globalization. Baker 17 of the GK writes that because large states are inherently difficult to govern, the globalized world is moving towards them splintering. Indeed, Donato 17 of the Atlantic finds that Catalonia independence movement in the status quo is a reaction to the globalization of Europe. Second, media madness. Dominic 17 of the University of Barcelona explains that Catalans trust their media the most, and the regional government knows this. Thus, the main driver of secession has been the Catalan media's 30-year narrative discouraging compromise with Spain and assuring hostility against them. Third, generational change. Gonzalez 17 of Foreign Policy finds that secession will grow more likely with generational change as support for unity is strongest among the aging population. Fourth, radicalization. Box 17, the Financial Times explains that the moderates in the independence movement have lost control and are being replaced with radicals who will ensure that the push for total independence continues. Thus, Taylor 17 of Politico finds that the prospects for discussions are slim. Fifth, cyclical nationalism. Goodman 17 of the Washington Post notes that nationalist leaders are incentivized to start disputes with the Spanish government to turn Catalans towards independence. Conclude 17 of NY Times notes that the nationalist movements feed off each other. The escalation of Catalan nationalism in turn fuels Spanish nationalism. Overall, Mir 17 of NYU writes that self-determination is unstoppable and no power can indefinitely prevent any group from eventually gaining independence, regardless of how difficult and how long it might take. Balfour 17 of Foreign Policy warns that no form of mediation will bridge the divide between Catalonia and Spain. The impact is war. Planet 17 of MIT concludes that the political dynamics of the Catalan standoff signal civil war which could kill over 100,000. Even worse, William 16 of American University concludes that these conflicts destabilize entire regions, creating refugee crises, war economies, and terrorist safe havens, all catalyzing conflict. Fortunately, affirming prevents war, as granting Catalonia their independence peacefully eliminates the need for violent secession. Sierra 06 of UC Boulder finds in a meta-analysis that peacefully agreed upon borders are rarely fought over. Contention 2 is sailing to victory. Tower 15 of CMS finds that Catalonia's major ports are underutilized and underdeveloped. Critically, these ports are dual use, meaning they can facilitate private and military traffic without trade-offs. Unfortunately, Spain will not develop these ports for 3 reasons. First, the Catalonian crisis, which Calvo finds is preventing Spain from investing in maritime security. Second, the threat of a Moroccan invasion, which as Hayes 17 of the Atlantic Council explains, forces Spain to prioritize ground assets over naval ones. Third, the infrastructure gap. Catalan News 14 reports that Spain has reduced investment in Catalonian infrastructure by 50%. Fortunately, an independent Catalonia would develop these ports to their full potential. Pedrosa 17, the Catalonian Director of Transport, stated that Catalonia wants to expand its ports to enhance trade and Mediterranean presence. Fortunately, Estonol 17 of the University of London finds that an independent Catalonia would regain significant tax revenue by localizing its investment into infrastructure and with us upgrade its ports and surrounding facilities. There are 2 impacts. First, electrifying the economy. Infrastructure spending yields massive returns, as Wilson 12 of UC San Diego explains that each dollar of infrastructure spending increases GDP by at least $2. Salem 15 of MIT notes that improving port infrastructure significantly increases economic growth, GDP, and the success of nations, while Clive 4 of Georgia University quantifies that improving port efficiency can increase a nation's trade by up to 25%. This is critical as Erasmus 13 of Hawaii University concludes that a 1% increase in trade decreases the probability of conflict by 5%. Second, protecting the Mediterranean. Lang 15 of the Army War College observes that a weak NATO presence in the Mediterranean has created a strategic vacuum for Russia to fill and promote instability. Fisher 15 warns that this aggression risks miscalculation of war. The risk is higher than ever as infrastructure designed to prevent miscalculation is gone, and Russia is more assertive and unpredictable than ever before. Thus, Fisher concludes that the situation is more dangerous than the Cold War. Fortunately, Calvo writes that more developed ports under an independent Catalonia would also cut costs for NATO partners to more than naval fleets in the Mediterranean, increasing the alliance's presence and distribution of resources across the region and allowing for a faster response time. This is key as Gore 16 of Johns Hopkins University writes that in order to deter Russian aggression, NATO must increase its response time and durability by leveraging its allies to build new regional architectures. Thus, we affirm. 5 seconds.
Because they added 2 extra ones for flexibility and then they spread on the tape and they spread too much. It was shorter.
I already heard that.
Yeah.
Because we just did the same case like around again.
Oh, okay. Can I take the first question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in your second contention, your third point, you talk about Morocco. Could you just expand on this a little bit more?
Yeah, okay. So basically what we do is we give you 3 reasons that Spain isn't currently developing the ports. One of the reasons is that it's scared of a Moroccan invasion, which means that it focuses that it focuses on land.
Wait, why would Morocco invade them?
I mean,
are
they
they
have-
enemies
look.
of Spain?
Yes, they have a really, really long history. There's a history that goes back 1,000 years of
No, I
Morocco
get that.
invading
No,
Spain.
but currently, right?
Well,
NATO concludes
Okay.
that Morocco is an ally that works with NATO. Why
That's
would Morocco
awesome.
attack a NATO ally?
Okay, that's great, but it doesn't really matter why. What matters is that our
It
evidence.
does.
Can I finish?
You may.
It matters that the Spanish government perceives a threat from Morocco, and because they do, they have focused on their ground sources. But we've
Okay,
been
but
on
no,
this
but
for
to respond to
45
that real
seconds.
quick.
Can I get a question?
You may.
You say that Spain is locked out of these debt markets. Why is that?
Okay.
Not Spain, Catalonia.
Catalonia's locked out of them.
Yeah.
So the reason is because Spain is like the main country that their debt is allocated towards, right?
So it's just Spain, or it's all the whole market?
So it's mostly Spain.
Okay,
right?
thank you.
And then so the reason why this is bad is because when Spain has this, or when Catalonia secedes from Spain, they will no longer allow
I
them to
understand
default
why
the
you're
debt
saying
onto
it's,
them. Yeah.
it's bad.
Okay. Sorry to answer your question. Can I ask you another one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. So your second impact is like NATO is weakened. It was weak right now, and you need to like check
No,
Russian aggression.
that's not our
right?
impact. Our impact isn't about NATO being weak. They have
You're checking
basically
Russian aggression, right?
yes.
Okay.
But it's not about them being weak. The problem is they don't have a fast enough response time because they don't have ports near enough to the Mediterranean that they can use.
So they're weak, they want to be stronger, so they want
It's
to
not,
improve their
strength
ports.
is too general. It's specific to a faster response
Okay,
time.
that's, thank you.
Can I get a
clarify that.
question?
You may.
Okay, so basically the whole like fracturing and silent majority, those are both contingent on just like disagreement automatically leading to violence, right? Especially the fracturing one. I don't understand your link there.
Would you like me to explain it?
That's why I asked.
Perfect, Listen, Tracy's question. So so to clarify real quick, on the fracturing, what happens is all the all the parties right now, there's three separatist parties that are in Catalonia, they elected, and then once they get rid of like their main momentum, the only reason why they're working together and forming a coalition is because they want independence.
Yes.
Once this like whole their entire purpose of the coalition, once they get independence, it's going to completely dissolve, right?
Okay, what's the problem with disagreement? Like the government's not going to collapse. They're
No,
going to do everything
yeah.
they can to stay in
No,
power.
I get that,
What's
yeah.
the problem?
The government's not going to collapse, but they're never going to be able to form a government in the first place. Because
No,
at the
wait, they
very
have a
begin-
government.
No, well, no,
They have a parliament.
no, yeah, that doesn't mean they have a government. Like,
Wait, what?
no, Catalonia right now does not have their own functioning government. Like after like
They just re-elected basically every member of their government in December. I don't
no,
understand
I'm
what you're
talking
saying.
about no, they don't have like an independent government
But
right now.
your
independent
link
from
is
Spain.
disagreement leading
Yeah,
to
no,
a government
my link
failure.
is once you gain independence, they need to go in and start their own new government. And the thing is, they have fundamental disagreements, which mean that they will like polarize on ideological lines. Like to give you an example,
Okay.
like it's not time yet. So so the left wants like a defense, or the left does not want a defense force. The right wants a defense force. Like the left doesn't want to be a
Okay.
NATO. The right wants to be a NATO. So at the very get-go, they
Okay,
have no
that's
chance
fine.
of forming a government. Thank you.
Let me get it. I'm just reading an overview at the top and then everything else is on.
Where?
Use case? On your case. Okay. Everyone ready? Time starts now. Start with an overview in their case. My opponents are painting a false dichotomy that is either independence or nothing. However, a complex situation doesn't have a binary answer. All the LAFC and BC explains in 2017 that Rajoy and other leaders in both Spain and Catalonia called for negotiations to address the conflict. Indeed, Tony Barber of the Financial Times explains in October 2017 that both major parties in Madrid have agreed to reform Spain's constitution in order to give Catalonia more autonomy without secession. Thus, the PMI research group concludes in 2017 that there's only a 15% probability of secession because negotiations will inevitably resolve the conflict. This middle option that is already occurring is preferable to full secession for two reasons. First, it would please everybody. Drew Garb, the Brown Political Review, explains in 2017 that negotiations would be the best possible option to achieve the goals of both the Spanish and Catalan governments, thus pleasing everybody. Indeed, the Gulf Times quantifies in 2017 that 71% of Catalonians would prefer for politicians to find an agreement based on Catalonia staying as a part of Spain. At that point, you're delinking their entire case. But then let's go to the first contention about secession. At the top, they say that secession is inevitable. They reach you 5 warrants. Group them all. At the top, Torres explains that support recently has gone down for Catalonian independence after the election. At that point, they're not going the trends on the right direction. But secondly, more importantly, Penty gives a warning when he says that leadership in Catalonia is fractured and divided. That means that they're not going to be able to push for independence. But then they talk about like generational change and how that's inevitable. The issue is the intergenerational foundation explains that the reason that the people, like the young people, support independence is because like young people tend to take risks and don't think about the consequences. That's why they support Catalan independence. Once they grow older, they're shifting away from that narrative. But then that's why the BMI Institute concludes that 85% of the time negotiations are going to resolve the conflict. Right there, you're delinking them. But then they say that like a civil war is going to occur. The issue is the Gulf Times explains that just 24% of Catalan people actually support independence. If that's true, 24%, a quarter of the population's not going to trigger a civil war. You're delinking right there. But then at the end, you're turning conflict because Oscan explains that independently radical nationalists, after independence is given, are going to spark conflict on the border. Border conflict is going to outweigh because that's going to be between Spain and Catalonia, not a civil war. Right there, you're delinking, or you're turning. But then go to their second contention about like sailing to success. At the top, you're turning the argument. They say that we're going to develop ports. There's 2 issues here. First, Xinhua News explains that Spain is developing these ports with 4.2 billion euros. Right there, you're turning it against them. When you affirm, you lose that investment. But secondly, more importantly, we would contend that investment is what drives these ports. However, Martin explains that when you create a new state, that creates uncertainty. People don't want to invest in a new state. That's really problematic because that's why Kosovosa explains that right now, like you're not seeing any actual like decrease in investment. Like you're seeing small effects but not large effects. Kosovo, however, explains that if you affirm and give them their own state, the amount of investment decreases drastically. That's turning the internal link. That means that ports are going to go down in their world, not go up. But then to go to the individual impacts, or like the warrants as to why they're not developing. First, they talk about the Catalan crisis. crisis, I would contend that like the Catalan crisis is like not going to end even if you affirm, remember, the border conflicts that I just read. But then they talk about like the Morocco invasion. The issue is NATO explains in 2017 that they consider Morocco an ally. Why would Morocco attack Spain if they're both part of NATO? At that point, like, you're just delinking them. This is absurd. It has no probability of occurring. Then they talk about infrastructure. The issue is they say that like they'll get more money so they can pay for infrastructure. The problem is that like we would contend that political polarization, that's our third warrant, ensures that no infrastructure is not going to occur. But then they send the evidence from our first warrant that tells you that infrastructural barriers are insurmountable because of the fact that they have to make all these institutions, they don't have the funds to do so. Go to their individual impacts. Their first impact is on the economy. The issue with port economy is going to be the Catalan government explains that 43% of the imports in Catalan ports come from China. And the reason that's really important is because Gao explains that China doesn't support Catalan independence. China has stand by the Spanish government. They are allies with Spain. That means that Chinese trade would inevitably go down when you affirm. That turns economy because that means that these ports aren't going to have any things in them. At that point, they're not getting an impact. But then their second impact is all about the Mediterranean. First, you're turning it because Bamberg explains that currently the Catalonian taxes that go to the government aren't redistributed in welfare. They go to the military, and that's really problematic because when you affirm, that means that like they're not going to pay these taxes to the Spanish government. That's really problematic because that's where the bulk of Spain's military spending comes from. Right there, Spain's not going to be able to fund the NATO. That right there, you're turning the argument. But then Reuters explains that they talk about Russia. The issue is that Russia wants Catalonian independence because it would fracture Europe. At that point, you're turning the argument. Balkanization means that Russia wants this as a successful ploy for them. At that point, please affirm.
What's the date on your first response to Navy that says that Spain's developing the ports
Or
now?
can we just see that it's the specific ports they're talking about as well?
Yeah, like actually let's just see the card. Make
Yeah.
sure the date's highlighted next.
And I'd also like to see the card that says that China's going to decrease trade.
I'll show them to
You got both of them?
you. No, I just have one. That's cool.
Which one's which?
This one is China. Or this one is their investment.
Like now. Okay.
Yeah.
It says the date on it.
Yeah, March 2017.
Okay, thanks.
And then you wanted China trade?
Yeah.
Or just, no, don't hide them. Because they just sounds great.
Can I actually spell the card one more time?
No, I think we're good on that one.
Okay. Like, I mean, if you want.
Just highlight the one that says that China's going to reduce trade.
Yeah,
Oh, it just says China doesn't support that one.
Oh, it doesn't say they're going to reduce trade.
It
No,
doesn't.
it doesn't give the
We don't need
explicit.
it then.
okay, awesome.
We're on the ground.
That was one.
Yeah. Okay. The order is going to be an overview that I would flow as like an extension on our case, but it's also going to be responding to their overview and their responses on C1 inevitability scenarios. So like, flow that how you will, and then down their case.
Their
Oh,
case.
that's their overview.
Yeah, I guess just flow next to their overview.
It happened to be responding to it.
Yeah, and then I'll be going back down our case, and I'll signpost along the way.
Overview, their case, your case?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're a little bit fast.
Okay. Cool. And I need to set up the speech doc. Do you need me to run rep to do that, or can I just?
Don't worry about it, unless they want you to.
I just gotta like change the line spacing so I can read. It's too condensed.
We all used to do that.
Okay. Put it in a Word doc. My bad. Sorry. I'm too blind to like read off Google Docs, I realized. Okay. Sorry about the delay. Is everybody ready? Start with an overview that responds to their problems, other responses to their arcs and inevitability. Secession is inevitable in their world. Gary 17 writes that Catalonia is a frozen conflict. The result, Williams of American University explains these conflicts that result in determination result from deep cultural differences that persist for centuries despite numerous attempts at reform. Frozen conflicts are impossible to end without a permanent solution. As Paul of 10 of Newsweek explains that they drag on through cycles of stalemates and ceasefires, preventing any political virtues from transit, creating long-term stability. Their evidence is all short-term. This is because, as tier of UC Boulder explains, well, agreements may signal short-term peace down the line, but preferences of one or both parties are likely to change to the point that where an old agreement can be revved up in a moment's notice, causing conflict to reignite. That's the only way to prevent secession in the long-term permanently is to affirm. Certainly the first contention about terrorism. 2 responses. First, my opponents tell you that Catalonia is currently a terrorist hotspot, but that is despite the fact that Spain's resources are being used to combat terrorism. The obvious implications of the Spanish anti-terrorism measures are not unsuccessful. The reason they fail is my second response, the Catalan identity crisis. Renari 17 of the Wilson Terror Research Center explains that, well, nationalist migrants in Spain struggle to resolve the tension between their parents' nationalities and their Spanish identity. He furthers that this conflict is made doubly difficult for those who live in Catalonia due to the fact that their further struggle with the divided identity between one's home region and country. Problematically, Renari finds that those struggling with their own identity and prone to radicalization due to the fear of the clearly defined identity that it provides. Thus, by affirming you remove the ambiguity in the area, effectively removing the very problem that's allowed the extremism to take a foothold in the region. Then on their second contention, an overarching response, turn, affirming solves, an independent Catalonian state would require a substantial amount of goods and investment, creating a major world market. Grinnell, the University of Barcelona, explains that companies would be incentivized to enter Catalonian markets if they increased demand of the state, allowing for infrastructure expansion, solving for all of their harms. Then on infrastructure, 2 turns. First, recognize that a peaceful resolution can settle this easily by negotiating the level of debt down to a manageable level. Benjamin Georgetown explains that an amicable resulting from Spain's acceptance of independence would result in a resolution of national debt. Second, a fiscal surplus solves. As Bronson, the University of Barcelona evaluates the additional costs of revenues that Catalonia would experience following independence and concludes that Catalonia would see a fiscal gain equivalent to 7% of the GDP annually. This is important as an increase in government revenue would solve, increase the ability for Catalonia to pay down its debt, solving back for their harms. Then on national isolation, 2 responses. First, Calvin 15 writes that Catalonia possesses ports that are strategically located for vital NATO operations, which he concludes would allow Catalonia to leverage themselves into the EU as they trade for the use of their ports in Barcelona and Tarragona. And second, they don't need to be in the EU to use the Euro, Kosovo, and others prove empirically. Then group political fracturing and shadowing minorities together. Both of these arguments argue that a newly established Catalonia would not have any democratic integrity because parties disagree and people are represented. The comparative analysis is simple. Right now, Spain has undermined 49 Catalan laws and declared absolute military rule over the country. The oppressive status quo will always look worse than the risk of Catalonian collapse, and it's important to note that both these subpoints are risks of failure at the point where my opponents can give no unique or quantifiable probability of either of these wars. Don't grant them this high likelihood. Then on their impact. Recognize that it is completely non-unique by the forecastable doom of Spain. Spangler 17 of the Asia Times finds that Catalonia's population is aging so fast the cost of supporting its elderly will break the national budget, leading him to conclude that Spain will implode within 20 years, regardless, and the Catalonians should leave now to avoid inevitable destruction. The implication is that not only will Catalonia's economy be inevitably harmed, but they will succeed in the face of crisis, meaning the negative impacts are triggered in 20 years anyway. It's totally non-unique and its functions as offense for us. Overall, even if you buy the affirming harms of Catalonian economies, the comparative weighing is easy. It comes from Johnson, who finds that secession without conflict is much easier to recover from than secession with. Now, for an underview of my opponent's case, it is the unique benefit of affirming saving European Union. Benjamin Georgetown University finds that the EU's flexibility and determination to centralize and consolidate nations and culture without regards to regional diversity, making it vulnerable to socioeconomic volatility that will cause its inevitable destruction in the status quo. The only solution is granting Catalonian independence. Varoufakis finds that Catalonian independence is a golden opportunity to recharacterize the EU's mission to become one that is more flexible and open to regional diversity. By giving Catalonia what it's asking for, the EU will signal to populist and regional movements that the EU's outdated conception of sovereignty has evolved, preventing collapse. This advantage outweighs their entire case and functions as terminal defense because you can multiply their state collapse impact by its factor of 28. Then go to his rebuttal. Start on the war thing. First of all, start on the ships. They say Spain's developing ports. That evidence not about ports, just says infrastructure. Our evidence outweighs. Second, on investment. They never show you that external investors are necessary. It's just about Catalonia investing, but they don't have the ability to now. Then they talk about Morocco. That evidence isn't predictive. It's just a fact. They're scared of it. I don't know why. Doesn't matter. Then on infrastructure gap, remember that they have every incentive to spend on infrastructure. They drop the analysis that says when you spend money on infrastructure, you actually get a return on investment. So if they're worried about the economy, it makes logical sense that they're going to spend more. That's just easy. Then China evidence never actually said that China's going to stop trade. That's just an analytic. They don't actually do that. Then on the Mediterranean turn, that doesn't matter because it's just about response time. Then overall, realize that all their harms are triggered by unilateral secession. That's really important because the only risk of that happening is in their world. In our world, it's peaceful. Bentagore of the Irish Times finds that it's going to be resolve all their harms. You ready for cross?
Actually, can I call it the review card?
It's 2 cards. It's Bentagore, which says it's inevitable, and then Varoufakis, which says that it's resolved if you go to both. Okay.
Everyone, quiet down.
Yeah.
We'll just start cross that so it takes forever to look at them.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I thought they started cross.
No. Okay, so I'm just gonna show them in
I
order.
love this.
And they're both kind of like long.
Hey Chris, I have a question. So
Yeah,
they
it's all
had run
highlighted, but, like,
theory
there's a
against
long
like
bar, man.
Zubin and Griffin at UOP finals. Would Nueva have been as tech as it was?
Probably.
Okay.
I don't think we had
Yeah, go for it.
Really? Do you think it would have had an incentive
Like
to
basically
like?
the yellow is like what we actually
theory tech
read
is
from. If
different
you
than,
want
like,
more
normal
context, you're
tech.
gonna want to read the
Like,
bolded,
always,
like the larger font,
That's-
like the yellow should do, and then that's in.
We just like took a lot of the condo.
Yeah, I'll
And you can just use my mouse like I trust you.
Yeah, the fact that they were reading 11 advocacies shows that they were technical.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or at least trying to and failing.
Sit on the panel together. What happens to the rest of us?
You're the lay judge of this
I'm
panel.
the way judging this panel, dude. Oh, why are you even judging this?
I love judging. I've fallen
So now you're good for cross, right?
Yeah, I didn't have to come back today, but I
You
did.
volunteered.
Yeah, what the hell? Capital dropped last night.
Great.
Times begin.
Are you gonna have the first question?
In response to my overview, you say that the only long-term solution is secession.
Why? Do you wanna know why?
No, like, so here's my question on that. Like, they've had secessionist dreams for how long now, right?
Quite some time.
Right. So let's talk about like these secessionist dreams, right? And every single time that they boil to like a tense point, what happens?
They tried what your advocacy is.
Right. So
They tried
negotiate and they
concessions.
bring tensions back down.
And what happened
Right.
after that?
Like I would tell you that like that's
They
not
fell
a-
apart?
No.
That's what happened.
Negotiations have given more fiscal autonomy.
Wait,
right?
no they didn't. We
Yes,
tried
they
this in
did.
1978 and in 2006 empirically. Both times they failed. This just fits the narrative that Tier Paul sets up, which is that frozen conflicts are cyclical. It's like a pendulum.
Right, okay.
Wait, can I finish explaining?
Yeah, sure.
It's like a pendulum, right? You have periods of low intensity, periods of long intensity. The problem is, if you look at the overall trend, the amount of tensions has increased. For example, this was the first time that Spain ever invoked Article 155. What like Tier says is that these short-term solutions are just delaying the inevitable, and when you drop Mir, it's really critical because Mir says that in the long run, no matter what, it's going to be inevitable. Can I have a question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Your card that you read, it's either in case or rebuttal about secession, like when secession happens, there's a 90% chance of conflict. That's two questions. A, that's talking about unilateral conflict, or unilateral secession, right?
If you're just gonna indict the card, you can do it.
No, it's not an indict. I actually like the card a lot.
Right.
But I just want to make
Yeah,
sure
me too.
it's unilateral secession, right?
I would tell you that like separation.
Wait, well, what does the card say?
Like
It
yes,
says unilateral secession.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that what affirming guarantees?
Like, okay,
Because
so-
isn't affirming like bilateral secession, and then we read
Okay.
5 reasons why in your world it's going to be unilateral
Right,
secession?
so like let's talk about that, right? Like when you affirm, yes, like the resolution gives you fiat for Spain to grant Catalonia.
Which is
It
what,
doesn't
bilateral or
give you-
unilateral?
Wait, hold up. But it doesn't give you fiat to necessarily change the like fundamental positions of the Spanish government, which
So
means that there's
we're
still
supposed to
going be
debate a
tensions
resolution in
between-
which Spain passes a policy, then immediately just acts as if it didn't pass that policy, goes back on it. Like I mean, fiat's like durable, right?
Okay, no. Like yes, fiat is.
Like, imagine if every resolution
like,
was
we're not
just,
saying
like-
that secession is.
But you
going
debated the
to-
guns topic, right?
Yeah, okay.
Imagine how
Like,
bad it would be
I-
if like
no.
you just got to debate that Trump
I
would just like
understand we're like
repeal it
durable
after.
fiats, right? But
Okay.
like we are saying that the resolution gets passed, it gets fiated, and it doesn't. Like we're not saying.
But
that,
it's
like, after that, we're
bilateral,
going-
right?
Like no, it's Spain granting Catalonia independence
Which
in
is
one instance of like
two-
amicability. You don't get to
Okay.
say that it's like a.
So the
conflict.
better
Can I
point,
have a
or
question?
wait, really
We
quickly.
spent a lot of time.
That's fine. Actually, really quick question, please.
Yeah.
Begging you. Okay. How does that interact with the idea that like unilateral secession won't lead to violence, which you put on like the defense on our case? How does that 90% probability card interact with the defense on our C1, like specifically on the impact level?
What do you mean?
Like you say war isn't likely, but then you also say that in unilateral secession there's a 90% chance
Right.
of
So
war.
after secession, tensions between the host state of the original state and like the new state.
So wait,
that's what
who's like
conflict
lying? Is it you or the
Wait.
card?
Wait, what?
Like I'm just confused. Like
Can we
it's
just
either
have-
not
like,
likely or it's a
like
90% chance. Like that's a huge
No,
gap,
there's
right?
like no probability of
Alright, that's the end of
conflict now.
class.
Okay, what? We'll take that.
I remember the math practice. What happened? Just all of it. I promise we're not actually. Oh yeah, because you both stressed, right? We did see that this one, right? She's
Such an different.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, the style is like Raymond's is exactly. Yeah, I would be totally different. Yeah.
He looks straight up scribe.
Yeah, but he did it slow.
It was like he made bad arguments, but it was like
still yeah, and it was also like, I mean, it wasn't that fast, but it was like, it was the type of argument he was reading was like, yeah, I'm sure, yeah. The type of speech was
Is that all your prep?
Yeah.
Okay, we just used all of our prep.
yeah, I think so. Maybe ASU finals. What?
Where are you going?
With my judges like an off time rundown.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay, great. So I'm going to be looking at, on their side of the flow, oral review in their case. And then we'll be looking at their first impact about Civil War. We'll be moving down to ports and kind of their impacts on economic supports. And then back on just kind of generic on our side. Is that good with everybody? So in the overview level, remember the negotiations are going to be solving in either world, specifically in the neg world. We're going to have the status quo, the upcoming negotiations happening right now. First, second negotiations are happening right now. Second off, if you affirm there's going to be any negotiations happening because Hawaii will not negotiate with them. The next move on to this issue, they talk about their overview, how it's like long term. No, both are like long term. That's when you look to this issue about OSCAM. The term we put in their case is that border conflicts will insinuate if you have them go to independence. This is really crucial right there because what happened to Spanish nationalists in Spain, they're going to be coming up and they do not want Spain to serve. Like whether or not they're associated with the Spanish government, they're always going to go in there and they're always going to fight them. They're always going to fight them on the border. And they're going to go into the country, and this is going to be internal conflict, which is going to go on forever. So basically, like in both worlds, you're going to have long-term conflict. They don't get like any impacts up there. Like best sense of turn. Next on this issue about ports. Remember, so like Martinez says, like whenever you like have Spain, is right now they're trying to like put in more infrastructure, and like also like FDI's coming in and improving their ports. But when you have this crisis going on, and like when you have like they're trying to like secede, and when independence happens, that's when FDI is going to go down. They're going to be having no more investment in the ports, so they're losing the argument right there. Also, like the issue about China. So China is like 43% of the imports that go in there. The only response is they say like, oh, it's only analytics. But no, like if China doesn't like Catalonia, they're not going to trade with it anymore, so trade's going to decrease in that world. So let's move on to our strength case. We talk specifically about silent majorities. We tell you they like silent majorities are a big deal, but only 41% of the people support it. So what happens right there is the majority of the people are going to go in and they're going to have internal conflict with whether or not this leads to an actual civil war is irrelevant because the civil conflict is going to arise and they're going to be attacking right there. Next issue you need to address in this round is the ability of like an amicable agreement. So they would say that it's an amicable agreement. Remember, Griffiths would tell you that no state in history has ever seceded without any violence happening. It also does not respond to our issue about like border conflicts with applicants again right there. So the last thing they would talk about the issue about like saving the EU and it's their underview. Like no, this is like simply not true because Balkanization will happen if they like secede. Like that's kind of like the Russia thing right there, where like Russia wants them to secede because they don't get Balkanization. The EU will completely be delegitimized and it will fall apart if Balkanization happens. That's what happens when Catalonia secedes because other secession nations like the Basque country, like in Italy, they want to secede. That's going to occur right there. So we're going to flow over to our side where we tell you that the 9% probably of conflicts, civil conflict and civil war happening. That's the largest impact right there. So we went on civil war happening and also we went on the turn of the OSCAM because we're prolonging the conflict right there. Thank you.
I need to see a few things. We're going to prep first. We're going to stop prep. That's fine. You can just keep running prep. Can we see the card that says that balkanization will collapse the EU?
Wait, we didn't say it.
That's just an analytic.
Just,
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
cool. I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
Okay. If everyone's going to be ready, it's just extending a couple of cards from David's rebuttal, and then secession inevitable, because that pretty much controls the link into all arguments. All right. If everyone's ready, I'll move on to the weekend. Extend the Espanza evidence that David reads you in rebuttal about their economy. Espanza takes into account the negatives and the positives to the Catalonian economy, and basically finds that the GDP is going to go up 7%. This creates a state that one can invest, and two, a stable state. Also extend the Betancourt evidence that says that infrastructure is not a problem if Spain agrees to the secession. Okay, now let's talk about what really matters in this round. Secession is inevitable in their world. They drop 4 out of 5 of our warrants saying that tensions go up in their world. They drop the idea that media is increasing radicalism over the long term. They drop the idea that Catalonia just voted the most radical people into their parliament of all time. Their only response is that people don't want secession now. What we tell you is that people will want secession in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line, and they're certainly going to want it in 20 years when Spangler tells you that Spain collapses. And they also don't adequately respond to my partner's overview, which is a frozen conflict. What Gary tells you is that Catalonia is a frozen conflict. It doesn't matter if there are ebbs and flows, if people don't support them today. What he tells you is that eventually they have no choice but to erupt into war. And this is the card that we win the round on. It's Mir. Mir tells you that every single self-determination conflict will inevitably end in secession and end in war. At the point where secession is happening in the negative world, they lose every single one of their contentions, because each of their contentions is predicated on Catalonia being its own nation. So that is happening in their world. So here's what you're looking at. You're looking at a choice between Catalonia seceding violently, triggering a civil war, and a secession where they actually dialogue with Spain. Their only response to civil war is that the Catalonian people don't want war. Again, cross-apply everything I just said about frozen conflicts in our other 4 warrants. And they also say that border conflicts outweigh because it's between Spain and Catalonia. That's what a civil war would be too. And also remember the evidence we read in case that says that civil war destabilizes not only Spain and Catalonia, but the entire region, and actually creates a safe haven for terrorists. And at this point, you allow us to access our Plano evidence, saying that a civil war is incredibly likely with a negative ballot, but the only way to solve it is with an affirmative ballot. And if and when a civil war does happen without affirming, 100,000 lives will be lost. That is the biggest impact in the round, and secession controls the link into all of theirs, so you're going to be voting for us.
You guys good for Grant?
Yeah.
Y'all can go first.
So you talk about this overview on how it's going to ebb and flow until it erupts into war, right?
Yes.
How long has this conflict been going on?
I think since 1400 when Spain first conquered Catalonia. They've had about 6 wars since
Let's
then.
talk about the support rate. Right now,
Yeah.
would you agree that tensions are at a pretty high point?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
it's been
if the
like
support rate right now, when tensions are at such a high point, are still 24%, then when is the bright
Okay,
line triggered?
so that 24% number, we don't really need to talk, it's a little bit more complicated than it seems, because the 71% of people still want independence and more autonomy, which Spain can't
Like,
give
they
them
want
long
more
term.
autonomy.
Also, like, this way,
Wait, remember, cross-apply the tier evidence David reads you in rebuttal that basically says that Spain always goes back on their promises of autonomy. In 2006, they passed the Statute of Catalonia Autonomy. In 2010, they took it right back. Like, it's
also,
not going to help.
just to clarify, all the analysis that talks about what's happening in the short term, like all the non-predictive evidence, just like the one that's like observing the status quo, doesn't really matter, right? Like what Izzy said is that like this has been a frozen conflict, wars happened 6 times, like I can't quantify like 12 tensions, like how much it takes for there to be a bright line, but like historically it's been a frozen conflict, and Tier says that only a permanent solution will solve.
So like at best your impact of this is like very long term.
No.
Right?
It probably, well, I mean, you drop the Spanish collapse analysis from
Yeah.
Spangler's, that's like A, terminal defense on all of your offense, and B, it means secession
20
happens.
years max is what we're
Like,
saying.
yeah, Spangler says, like, yeah, like when Spain collapses in 20 years, that means all of your harms get triggered then. Like, you,
Wait,
Plus
let's
the
talk
Civil
about
War.
like Spain collapse.
what's that?
Let's
We
talk
can
about
talk
Spain
about
collapse.
I mean, it's a little late.
Well, no, we can
No, I
talk
need
about
to
it.
bring
Grand Cross, we can ask about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So like on Spanish collapse, like what is the warrant between Spain
Yeah.
and
Okay,
Spain
so
collapse?
yeah, so basically the warrant is that Spain has an aging population. In 20 years, they're going to be the
Right,
oldest.
so-
Can I explain? They're
No,
gonna be
but
the-
no, you tell me.
Like,
then
how many
No, I
times-
need to
Yeah,
finish
yeah,
explaining
just
this.
explain.
They're going to become the oldest country in the whole world. Here's why that matters. The people that are working aren't going to be paying enough to actually support them and support the pension system. So basically, that tells you that Spain's economy is going to crash and Catalonia's
Yeah,
going to
so
secede.
the card's like really
That
explosive.
logic, like
Right,
Spain,
so you're-
Russia.
I mean, you can
Okay,
close the
call for
card,
the
it's
card.
really explosive. What
I
is
mean,
this?
that's
Wait, this isn't,
Wait,
if you want
I I've been talking
So
for a
like,
while.
your analysis is that we should let Catalonia secede, which means less
No,
money goes.
secession is unilateral. You can
Grant
see
them
that
independence.
across.
There's
So,
a big
Granting
difference.
independence is way different
Just
than
listen.
secession.
Let us like assume that the resolution occurs, which means you affirm, right?
Which
Then
means
that
it's bilateral.
I mean, let me
Yeah.
finish. That means that Catalonia is now contributing less money to Spain, right?
Yes.
So if Catalonia is currently putting in a lot of money into the system to uphold these things like pensions, does that increase the pace of Spanish collapse?
I mean, like, probably not.
I mean, it seems a little bit late to be making.
No,
Like,
the reason
I
why
would say
guys,
no.
please
If you're
explain
worried
this,
that
guys.
they're
No,
I have a
because-
great answer to this, it's really good.
If you're
The
worried that
Spangler-
they're aging,
The
hey,
card
Let him
outweighs
answer.
your analysis in Crossfire, and it's also too late, but see, this was most important. Spengler says this is not an economic problem. So it doesn't matter, like he says that no amount of like reduction in the economy, like this is a predictive sociological model. He says that like doesn't like economic factors aren't going to slow or like increase this, like it is necessarily gonna happen in 20 years because of their population.
apart from that, rank cross.
It's too late.
We can talk
It's time.
anytime during rank cross.
No, Crossfire is
It's too
over.
late for defense on.
They did.
Just-
Are my judges ready?
Can you give us an
Yeah.
written up?
So I'm gonna start on my fourth warrant, my second contention.
Wait, you're gonna start on what?
My fourth warrant, my second contention. Then I'm going to go to order conflicts turn, and then I'm just going to wait.
Okay.
Time starts now. Starting on our fourth warrant about our second contention that goes cold dropped in summary. The reason this runs us around is Morado explains that like a violence between unionists who don't want to be in the country and separatists is going to be inevitable. And the reason that this is going to outweigh any argument they make is A, it links into this pendulum effect that they're talking about, because that means that the majority of the country is also going to not want to be there. That literally means it's the exact same logic as the warrant. That links in very well. That means I've asked that you're going to give us the warrant. But then this also outweighs this idea about like the Spanish collapse, because this is going to be outweighing on time frame. We tell you that this is going to occur when you give independence at that point. That means that this is going to be the prerequisite of 20 years. And the reason that it's important is that means that it definitely links into Spanish collapse, because that means that if violence is going to be in the country right next to, like that's bordering Spain, that's going to definitely lead to like more like increase in conflict, and as a result, decrease in the ability for Spain to actually like fix itself. But then go on the turn that goes cold dropped in this round, which is the OSCAV, that tells you that radical Spaniard nationalists are going to provoke violence on the border when you see this like this unilateral, or when you see this like bilateral secessionism. At that point, the reason this is definitely going to outweigh is, again, border conflicts mean that it's also going to hasten the pace of a Spanish collapse. That's a link in, because that means that Spain now has to divert resources into these border conflicts. That also means that like the young people are going to be fighting in a conflict, they're probably going to die. That's another link in. Irregardless, we are the prerequisite to Spanish collapse. This also definitely outweighs this idea about like civil war, because we tell you that this like violence only occurs after independence is occurring. Their violence they're talking about isn't going to occur until very far in the future. That means that we're giving you the time frame analysis. But then the reason that like this is really important is because these two links into conflict means that there's a 90% probability of conflict. They say that like there's going to be like conflict inevitable in the future. I would tell you that conflict in the short term is going to become entrenched anyways. That means that you should look at who actually systemically looks at conflict right now. In the future, the reason you're outweighing their argument is in the future there are disruptive events that could occur in that time before the conflict occurs. That means that there's a higher probability that their conflict is able to be negotiated or something to stop it. Our conflict is inevitable once you affirm. And for these reasons, please negate.
I did that last time.
Okay, so this should be pretty straightforward. It's going to be 2 extended turns. Actually, yeah, just 1 turn and then inevitability. Cool. All right. They missed the point of the resolution. We're asked to debate a scenario in which Catalonia is granted independence by Spain. Literally, all of their offense and all of their like analysis is relying on the idea that secession is unilateral. Like secession, like definitionally means unilateral. You can drop them there. Because what Bentacor explains, and they never adequately respond to, is the idea that when both countries agree, there's no conflict. This means that you drop their borders analysis because that's literally talking about secession, not unilateral like agreement. There's no place to vote them on the flow there. That's really important. Even more so, that's like also their fourth warrant also gets non-unique by that, because it's also talking about secession. there's one place you're voting for, so it's inevitability. They drop a lot here. First, they drop media, which says that there's going to be a gap between both sides that's irreversible. They also drop the idea that radical leaders just got elected. That's in the short term. In the long term, they mishandle frozen conflict. Frozen conflict is really important because it identifies that all their defense though on this falls when you take a long-term approach. This is where you sign your ballot for the pro though. They drop Mir from NYU because no matter what, secession is inevitable. The weighing is quite simple. Their predictive analysis don't come close to 100% probability, but when they drop Mir, you can cleanly extend it. It's a great place to vote for us. Even more so, they drop the idea that Spain's going to collapse. This functions in two ways. First, when they never respond to it, it means that it's terminal defense on their entire case because necessarily all their harms get triggered in 20 years. And even more so, it's offense for us because if you affirm now, Catalonia gets out. So the comparative weighing is clear. You vote affirmative pretty cleanly on a risk of offense. What Tier finds is that only a permanent solution can prevent violence in the long term at best, even if they have at best our offense outweighs theirs because we actually have solvency for theirs, which goes uncontested. Even more so, Planet says this war is going to cause 100,000 lives lost. This outweighs their localized violence because they dropped Williams, who says that when there's a civil war, it's going to spark into regionalized conflicts. At the end of the day, though, realize that all of their evidence is talking about a scenario in which Catalonia secedes. If you believe that the resolution is about Spain granting them their independence, then none of their evidence actually analyzes that scenario. We're also outweighing on probability and evidence quality because Bentacor is the only card in the round that analyzes the situation the resolution is actually calling for and finds that there necessarily be peace because they drop the solvency analysis and Spain's going to collapse anyway. You vote affirmative on a risk of solvency on the inevitability analysis.